All right, strap in, everyone. We're going deep today, diving into biology, specifically respiration and excretion. Looks like someone's been hitting the Bio 103 books, Lecture 20 on the respiratory system. Am I right?
It's fascinating stuff, isn't it? Easy to forget it's even happening until you have one too many coffees, then suddenly, bam, kidneys making their presence known. But really, the coordination going on inside us every second is mind-blowing.
Totally agree. Okay, respiration. Most folks think just breathing, but it's so much more than that.
Right, breathing is just the visible part. Respiration, it's a process happening at the cellular level, actually. Every cell in your body needs oxygen to produce energy and then produces carbon dioxide as a waste product. That exchange, getting oxygen in and that CO2 out, that's respiration.
So it's in every single cell? Wow, and that's the same for us, for insects, even whales?
Exactly the same. It's fundamentals for all animals. Think about how many different places animals live, the bottom of the ocean, up on mountains, crazy conditions. The respiratory system has to adapt to work everywhere.
Good point. Well, let's talk about our lungs then. Lecture 20 called them intricate spongy organs. Are we talking like high-tech sponges here?
Pretty much, yeah. Our lungs, they're complex, designed to maximize surface area for gas exchange. You've got airways that start with the trachea, then split into bronchi. Those branch even more into smaller tubes called bronchioles.
Okay, so far I'm picturing like an upside-down tree. But where does the spongy part come in?
At the very end of the bronchioles are these tiny air sacs called alveoli. We're talking millions of them. That's what gives lungs the spongy texture. And they're, well, the key players in this whole gas exchange.
Wait, millions. That seems like a lot. Any reason we need so many?
Definitely a reason. Goes back to maximizing surface area. Remember that analogy from the lecture about a tennis court? The total surface area of your alveoli, all of them together, it's about the size of a tennis court. Crazy.
Okay, that's impressive. But I don't quite get why it matters so much.
It's all about efficiency. The more surface area there is, the more room for oxygen and carbon dioxide to move, diffuse. Across those membranes between the alveoli and the capillaries, those are the tiny blood vessels around them.
So more surface area equals faster gas exchange, like having a bigger window for those gases to go through.
You got it. It's like comparing high-speed internet to dial-up. We need that oxygen in our blood, and fast. And that's where Fick's law of diffusion comes in.
Fick's law. Getting a bit technical now.
To put it simply, Fick's law says the rate of diffusion is directly related to the surface area and the concentration gradient. So bigger surface area, faster diffusion, and the bigger the difference in concentration between the alveoli and capillaries, the faster those gases move.
So our lungs are designed to optimize both. Big area, steep gradient. Clever. But how does the air even get into and out of all those millions of alveoli?
That's where our muscles come in. The diaphragm and those intercostal muscles.
Wait, intercostal. Those are the ones between your ribs, right?
Whoa!
I only remember them when I have a massive sneeze.
They're the unsung heroes. When we breathe in, the diaphragm contracts, it flattens out, and the intercostal muscles lift the rib cage up. So our chest expands, creating lower pressure in the lungs than outside. And since air likes to move from high pressure to low pressure,
it rushes in, like a vacuum, but in reverse. Then to breathe out, the muscles relax, the pressure flips, air goes out.
Exactly. It's this beautiful back and forth, muscles, pressure, amazing lungs. It all keeps us breathing. But it's not just moving air. It's about that gas exchange happening in those alveoli.
Okay, so we've got the air moving, thanks to muscles and some physics. But what's happening at the microscopic level, in the alveoli, where that actual exchange takes place?
Now, this is where things get really fascinating. Each alveolus is surrounded by a network of those capillaries. And the walls of both, they're incredibly thin. Some spots, just one cell layer thick. So the distance the gases have to travel is tiny.
So like a super thin border crossing for the oxygen and CO2.
Great analogy. And these gases, they're always trying to reach equilibrium, moving from high concentration to low. So they diffuse across these thin membranes. Oxygen, it moves from the alveoli where it's high into the capillaries where it's low. CO2 does the opposite, goes from the blood into the alveoli to be exhaled.
So that's why we breathe out air with less oxygen and more CO2 than what we breathed in.
You got it. But it's not only concentration, it's also about something called partial pressures. Imagine it like this. Each gas in a mixture, it exerts its own pressure, separate from the others.
Ooh, feeling another physics lesson coming on.
Don't worry, I'll keep it short. Partial pressure of a gas, it's basically a measure of its concentration in a mixture. So the partial pressure of oxygen, it's higher in the alveoli than the capillaries. That drives the movement of the oxygen into the blood. And CO2's partial pressure is higher in the capillaries, so it moves into the alveoli to be exhaled.
So it's a combination. Concentration gradients and these partial pressure gradients. Our bodies are pretty impressive.
They are, and we haven't even gotten to the ways our bodies regulate this whole thing, Make sure we get just the right amount of oxygen no matter what we're doing.
Wait, there's more. My brain is already a bit full of biology here. But before we go deeper into regulation, we should probably take a break. When we come back, we'll explore how this incredible respiratory system handles, well, those times when things get a little strenuous. Stick around.
Welcome back, everyone. Now imagine you're running to catch the bus, heart's pounding, breathing faster. Your body suddenly needs way more oxygen, right?
Oh, tell me about it. I actually missed my bus this morning. But how does our breathing keep up when, things change so fast?
That's where our control centers come in. Mainly a part of the brain called the medulla oblongata. It's always monitoring things like CO2 levels and blood pH. If there's too much CO2, meaning your cells are working hard and need more oxygen, the medulla tells the respiratory muscles, hey, pick up the pace.
So it's kind of like an internal thermostat, but for breathing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's incredibly sensitive. Even small changes in CO2 or pH can trigger changes in how fast and how deep you're breathing.
That's wild. So even when we don't think about it, our brain's orchestrating this whole breathing thing.
It's a pretty amazing system, and it shows how connected everything is. Your muscles need more oxygen, they make more CO2, the brain senses it, and bam, you're breathing harder without even realizing it.
Like our bodies have their own little communication network, keeping everything running smoothly.
Exactly. But as amazing as our bodies are, they're not invincible. Some things can really disrupt this balance.
That's what I was thinking about. What happens when things go wrong? What are some of the challenges our respiratory system faces?
Well, one of the biggest, and unfortunately it's getting worse, is air pollution. Think about everything we're pumping into the air, car exhaust, factories, even wildfires. All those particles and chemicals, we end up breathing them in.
And our lungs weren't meant to deal with all that junk.
Right. No, definitely not. It's like trying to run a marathon while breathing through a tiny straw. All that pollution irritates the airways, causes inflammation, makes it harder for the lungs to do their job.
So it's not just about being out of breath. It can cause serious problems.
Absolutely. If you're exposed to air pollution for a long time, it increases the risk of so many things: asthma, bronchitis, even lung cancer and heart disease.
That's scary. Makes you realize how important it is to, push for cleaner air, do what we can to help the environment.
Couldn't agree more. Every breath counts. And speaking of things that damage our lungs, we can't forget about smoking.
Right, smoking, like enemy number one for lung health.
It really is. Cigarette smoke has thousands of chemicals that damage the lung tissues, leading to less lung function, COPD, and different types of lung cancer.
So quitting smoking, or even better, never starting, is one of the best things you can do for your lungs.
Absolutely. And it's not just about individual choices, Creating smoke-free spaces and supporting policies that discourage smoking, those are really important for public health.
Okay, so we've covered the respiratory system. What about the other half of this deep dive, the excretory system? Easy to forget about those hardworking kidneys until, well, you have a bit too much to drink.
Oh yeah, then they let you know. But seriously, the excretory system is just as important as the respiratory system. It's all about keeping things in balance, getting rid of waste, regulating fluids, making sure our internal environment is stable.
So if the respiratory system is like the intake and exhaust, the excretory system is the waste management and recycling center.
Perfect analogy. And just like a city needs a good waste management system to stay healthy, our bodies need the excretory system.
And the kidneys, they're the stars of the show here, right?
Yeah.
They do a lot more than just filter waste from our blood.
They really do. They're like these mini super efficient filtration plants, always working to remove waste products, regulate blood pressure, control electrolytes. They even make hormones that help regulate red blood cell production.
Okay, color me impressed. Tell me more about how these filtration plants actually work. What's going on inside our kidneys?
Well, each kidney has about 1 million tiny filtering units. They're called nephrons.
1 million. Sounds like some serious filtration power.
Oh, it is. And each nephron is like its own mini processing plant. Different sections do specific jobs. It all starts with filtration. Blood enters the nephron through, well, it's a tiny cluster of capillaries called the glomerulus.
Glomerulus, that's a fun word to say.
It is. So the glomerulus, it acts like a sieve. Lets small molecules like water, salts, glucose, and waste products pass through into this cup-like structure called Bowman's capsule.
So it's like the first sorting step. The good stuff gets separated from the waste.
Exactly. But it's not perfect. Some things we need, like glucose and amino acids, they get filtered out too. That's where the next stage comes in, reabsorption.
Reabsorption, so we're getting those valuable nutrients back.
Right. As that filtered fluid, we call it filtrate, travels through the nephron's tubules, those are like winding tubes, those nutrients, and a lot of the water get absorbed back into the bloodstream.
A second chance for those important molecules. So we're filtering, then reabsorbing. What happens to the waste that's left over?
That's where secretion comes in. Certain waste products and excess ions are actively moved from the blood into the tubules. This makes the urine more concentrated.
So it's a three-step process: filtration, reabsorption, and secretion. Our kidneys are multitasking masters.
Yeah.
But what happens to that concentrated urine once it's, done with the nephrons?
It collects in the renal pelvis. That's the funnel-shaped part in the middle of the kidney. Then it flows down through the ureters to the bladder.
Ah, the bladder, our trusty storage tank.
You got it. The bladder holds the urine until, well, it's time to let it go. And when you do, the urine exits through the urethra.
So we've gone from tiny filtration in the nephrons to, well, it's quite a journey.
It is. And it shows how everything is connected, from the tiniest capillaries in the kidneys to the muscles that control the bladder.
It's amazing, huh? How our bodies take care of all that waste without us even knowing. But like with the respiratory system, I'm guessing things can go wrong with the excretory system too.
Oh, definitely. One of the most common is urinary tract infections, UTIs. Happens when bacteria get into the urethra and, well, they travel up to the bladder, sometimes even the kidneys.
UTIs, those are no fun. I've heard they're more common in women. Is that right?
Yeah, it's true. Women have shorter urethras, which makes it, unfortunately, easier for bacteria to get to the bladder. But UTIs can happen to anyone. Important to see a doctor if you have symptoms, burning when you pee, having to go all the time, pain in the lower abdomen, that sort of thing.
Good advice. What about kidney stones? Those sound, well, incredibly painful.
They can be, yeah. Kidney stones are these hard deposits that form in the kidneys, often made of calcium or uric acid. They can be tiny, like a grain of sand, or bigger, like a pebble, and when they try to pass through, it can be excruciating.
Ouch. Any way to prevent them from forming in the first place?
Best thing is to stay hydrated. Drinking lots of water dilutes the substances that make up the stones, keeps them from sticking together.
So that advice about eight glasses of water a day, it actually holds up.
It does. And if you're prone to kidney stones, your doctor might recommend changing your diet or even medication to help prevent them.
Sounds like both the respiratory and excretory systems, they're pretty sensitive. Amazing how they keep us going despite all the potential issues.
It really shows how resilient the human body is. But we shouldn't take it for granted. What can we do to keep both these systems healthy?
Well, we talked about not smoking and being aware of air quality for the respiratory system. Staying hydrated seems important for both, right?
Absolutely. Good hydration helps the kidneys function, and it thins the mucus in the respiratory tract, makes it easier to clear out.
So water really is essential. Anything else?
Regular exercise is good for both systems. Makes your lungs stronger and improves circulation, which helps the kidneys work better.
And I'm guessing a healthy diet doesn't hurt either.
You're right, it doesn't. A balanced diet, low in sodium and processed foods that can help regulate blood pressure and lower the risk of those kidney stones.
So it's those healthy habits we always hear about. They really do make a difference.
They do. And getting regular checkups with your doctor is important too, especially if you have any risk factors for respiratory or kidney issues. Catching things early is key.
This deep dive has been a fascinating look at these two essential systems. Before we wrap up, is there any connection between the respiratory and excretory systems? Do they ever, interact?
That's a great question. They seem separate, but they actually work together to maintain the body's pH balance. It's pretty interesting.
pH balance. That sounds, well, tell me more about that connection.
Remember we were talking about how the lungs remove CO2? Well, when CO2 dissolves in the blood, it makes carbonic acid, and that can make the blood more acidic.
right? Acids have lower pH. So if the lungs aren't working right, and CO2 builds up, the blood gets too acidic.
Exactly. That's called respiratory acidosis. But here's where the kidneys come in. They can help regulate the pH by either getting rid of excess acid or reabsorbing bicarbonate, which neutralizes acid.
So it's this careful balance between the lungs and kidneys, keeping the blood pH where it needs to be.
Exactly, exactly. A great example of how our organ systems are all connected, working together to keep a stable internal environment.
It's incredible how our bodies handle all of this without us even thinking about it.
It really is. It just goes to show how important it is to look at health in a holistic way. What we do to one system affects others.
This has been an amazing deep dive. Any final thoughts for our listeners out there?
I would say I would say don't underestimate the power of just breathing and staying hydrated. Simple things, but they're so important for keeping these vital systems running at their best.
Great advice. And as always, listen to your body. If something feels off, don't ignore it. Ignore it. Early detection can make all the difference.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us on this incredible journey through the respiratory and excretory systems. It's amazing what you can learn when you really explore what's going on inside your own body. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep being amazed by the wonders of your own biology.